Welcome to episode 66 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast featuring conversations in Canadian theatre. On Stageworthy, I sit down with actors, directors, playwrights, and more and talk to them about their life in the theatre. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use, and consider leaving a comment or rating. Those really help spread the word about the podcast. If you want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. My guest is actor, playwright, and director Rosemary Doyle. Rosemary is also the owner, operator, and artistic director of Toronto's Red Sandcastle Theatre.
No, so one of the things that is fun for me is when you sit there and everybody's just like, the thing I love about aging actually is that the population of the world is getting better and better looking. Like every time when I walk down the street, like I remember when I was 20, I thought the world was full of like just ugly people, right? And I find every year that passes, a larger percentage of the world looks great. It just looks amazing, right? It just looks amazing. Yeah. I'm like, oh, everybody's so attractive. Yeah, it's quite funny. It seems like directly in disproportion, or the opposite proportion to what I think about architecture. You know, like when I was young, I used to look at all these beautiful buildings, and now I'm like, every building looks like it's made with Lego blocks.
Yes.
Bad Lego blocks, like Darth Vader Lego blocks, and I hate it all. But people, I think, are getting gorgeous, and I think that's just maybe my eyes are going. Maybe I don't know, but also just I think youth in general is gorgeous, and I think what I believe, because I believe I am young. What I think is youthful now goes up to about 75.
Well, there you go. There's a certain blinder that the youth that when you're younger that you have, where you only think like, only my age and younger can be beautiful.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, those blinders sort of, my age and younger is.
Yeah.
There's a lot more of that. And
there's a lot more of that, and you
exactly, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like for me, I think I've always thought that people about 30 years older than me have always been very interesting and attractive. Mm-hmm. Right? Like when I was 10, I thought people who were like 40 were amazing. And now I think people who are like 80 are amazing. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. There's always like, when I was a kid looking at people who were older, there was always that, you must know
so much. Yeah.
I know that I'm one of those people. I'm like, when do I get to know all that stuff?
Well, you do actually, though, because every day you learn something. So it's not because they're smart. No. It's just that every day you learn something.
I know.
Like my son today, I have a 19-year-old, and my son today, he turned to me in conversation. We were talking about eye color because I have an unusual eye color. But my two sons both have my eye color. So they don't think there's anything unusual about this kind of orange eye that we possess. And he's like, oh, that's why that girl was staring at me. That's what he said. I'm like, yes, that is why, because you look like a freak. Anyway, but I was telling him this. And then we were talking about more unusual eye colors. And I was saying, well, there's this thing called lavender, purple eyes, which Elizabeth Taylor was supposed to have had. And I'm like, and that's a very small percentage of the population. And he goes, really? And he goes, who's Elizabeth Taylor?
Yes. Yep.
Which made me want to die.
Of course.
Yeah. I'm like, who's...
I work with people who were born in the 80s and so... Or 90s now. And a lot of I'll be like, oh, it's like this. And they'll be like, I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. But why can we blame them? That was last century.
It was last century.
Right? It's almost...
For me, it's like second nature to think that way. And for them, their references are gone. But every time I do it, I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm the old guy.
Right. How'd that happen? And this is the other thing that I find funny is that, when I was a youth and my whole life, I've been obsessed with the 20s, like 1920s Paris particularly, like all those writers, all those life stories. I spent my late teens, early 20s, right through to my 20s, reading basically everything that was available to me from that time period. If it was in that time period, I read it.
Right.
So I kind of have my own unofficial doctorate in that sort of thing, you know, like never went to school for it, but that's what I did. So what I found was really interesting is just 6 months ago, it occurred to me that it's almost the 20s again. Like, well, I'm going to be alive, knock on wood, in the 20s.
Well, how do we make this flapper
jazz
era thing come back in time?
Right now we're almost trying to start the war again, aren't we?
Let's
have a war.
We're almost on schedule to get that
exactly
started before the 100th anniversary is over.
Exactly, you know, seems to be what's going on. Right? Like, it's a little scary.
I know.
I mean, we've got our own little personal, you know, for lack of a better word, dictator coming in, right? Trying to do his thing and, you know, replace the word Jew with Muslim, and you've got it all going on.
Well, that is a fact, and that is one of those frightening things about living right now.
Is it so obvious?
Yeah. The other interesting thing about it, I saw this quote from Henry Rollins just the other day that was like, everybody's freaking out, this is the end of the world, but you know what? It's not. This is punk rock time.
Oh, yeah.
You know? This is like the same kind of thing that birthed the Sex Pistols and the punk rock movement in England. If we can just harness the rage and keep it going.
And turn it into art.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Well, I've always believed that every play, and part of the reason that theater is so alive and dynamic, is that every play is not just that play. You're never just putting on that play. You're putting on that play with these people at this particular moment in time. So all the references of every play that you do you're not in a vacuum. No. When you walk into the theater, although yes, we paint it all black, we turn the lights down, we bring the lights up, you're never in a vacuum outside of your society. You're always watching with the baggage that you've brought into the theater with you. Yeah. And I think anyone who thinks that that's not going on is missing the point of having a live experience.
I also think that sometimes, some young companies don't think about the why.
Yeah.
Of they're doing it. They sometimes think, I'm doing this play because I like this play.
Although I think that's a good why.
Okay too. It's like all those, Nuit Blanche comes along and you go through the program and you're like, what is this going to be?
Yeah.
You have to read through the line of the arts grant speak.
Oh my God.
Which is really just translates into, I thought it would be cool to put a thing on a thing.
Yeah.
But you can't say that.
No.
And it is good to say, I want to do this. But I think sometimes it's also important to say, I want to do this and now is the right time for doing this.
Yeah.
X.
Well, I find the wildest thing is going to the AGO. Like, I'm a member. It's the one thing that from the time when I used to have money to now, it's the one thing I didn't give up. Right. I kept that. Haircuts have gone the way of the dodo, but my AGO membership is in good standing. And one of the things I love doing is going and walking around and looking at the art. Oh my God, my phone's on. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
We'll just let it chime go in the background. Yeah. So is one of the things I love doing is, hello, Red Sandcastle Theatre. May I help you? That's my life. Like at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, of course you can get tickets.
That at 3 o'clock?
Oh yeah, I answer it 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Well, I guess when you have the responsibility of this building, if it rings at 3 o'clock in the morning,
who knows what it's for? No, but often it's drunk people wanting tickets, and I'm like, sure, and they're like, oh, I didn't know you'd be open. I'm like, no problem. So they must think I have this robot sitting in a little box office all the time, and they often think that they're going to call an answer machine, so they don't really mind.
No.
Anyway, but what I was saying about the AGO is that you've got the little things, and sometimes I just love looking at the painting and then reading the description, and the real art is in the description. It's just so beautiful, like what they thought they were going to do.
Right.
Is so gorgeous.
It's always interesting to think of how things change over time between what the writer or the original artist created or meant to create and to what it's become over time.
And how precious people want to make it, which was sometimes just not the point. Yoko Ono, I went to see Yoko Ono's exhibit a bunch of years ago. And one of her ones is you would walk up onto a ladder and look in a little box and it would say sky or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on this. But there was the experience was to walk up the ladder and look at this word.
Right.
So, of course, at the exhibit, you're not allowed to walk on that ladder.
Oh.
You're not allowed to go look at that word.
Of course.
You're just allowed to read the description of what happened back in the 60s when they were groovy. She had another one where you were supposed to take a nail and hammer it into this piece of wood.
Mm-hmm. But now, of course,
you can't do that. No.
Was it just like the piece of wood that they had hammered into?
Yes.
Then? Okay.
Yes. Now you can't go and
participate
in the art anymore because she's too important. You have become less because she has become more to the point where she has become untouchable. And I think that's the thing with our society is that we have created this thing called fame, which makes people untouchable. Right. And as artists, that is what we are in art to be touched. We are in art to make a difference, to speak to people, to create, to share stories, to create stories, to be part of that society. Yeah. And then we get to a certain level where we're respected, but that respect almost makes it impossible to do our thing anymore.
It's like the idea that limitation is good for you.
Yeah.
And then when you get to a certain point and there are no limits, it's like,
the limit is now going to the grocery store.
Right. You look at somebody like Danielle Lepage, who was given
Robert Lepage or
Robert Lepage.
Robert Lepage.
And the Cirque du Soleil was like, we've got this. They'll build the theater to do whatever you want,
right?
And to direct the show you're going to direct. No limits because the casino doesn't have any limits.
Yeah.
So then there's no limitation on that, and limitation. So much can happen when you're limited. When you give yourself a limitation that you can get around.
So then he has to almost artificially impose them on himself, right? Yeah. He has to say, I am going to do a thought experiment and stick myself within these parameters, right? Whereas at the theater here at the Red Sandcastle, you can do things like say, your budget is $0. See where you go from there. Well, I'm expecting you to go over budget, but let's see what you can do, right?
We're sitting in a room right now where they have made, this is a whole kitchen. They've utilized some of the stuff that's here to build a whole kitchen, bedroom, living room, dining room. This is a home.
They even have a piano with a foyer.
They do. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And this light goes on and off. The dining room chandelier
goes on and off.
It dims. It does the whole thing.
Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's
a great show, by the way. Rabbit Hole. It's amazing.
Rabbit Hole?
Yeah. Well, it's going till the 11th.
I was looking at the cast, and it's a great cast.
Oh, they're amazing. Cast, really beautiful. Yeah.
We've been sort of rambling for a bit, and I haven't had a chance to ask you some of the things that I really want to get to. It's good. I love rambling.
I love rambling.
So it's great. But I actually wanted to ask you to start with, before we start talking about the Red Sandcastle.
Okay.
About when you first started wanting to be involved in theater.
Oh, interesting. 8. I've been actually before that because I've been doing it since I was 8. Mm-hmm. So before that, I used to take ballet lessons, and I did little school plays and stuff. But I used to do these ballet lessons, and there was a really thin coffee table. Probably every house had it. The fake teak coffee table, which was about a foot off. It had the 2 little fake drawer handles on this edge of it, and it was big and long, about maybe 1.5 feet wide and about 5 feet long. Mm-hmm. And I used to get up on there, and I used to do my ballet dancing on there, which would make my dad's friend Patty O'Brien apoplectic because the couch was such a way that this coffee table was if I went to the one end, if it had flipped over, I would have gone through the giant picture window. But I guess I never killed myself. And because I'm still alive to tell the tale. But I've been doing that sort of thing. And I had I had the voice that I have now when I was little. So okay. I've been a singer since I was little, and I had a very grown-up voice. So when I was 8 years old, I went and there was a talent show, And my mother had been making me sing when I was little at parties and stuff ever since I was little. And I had started to take a few singing lessons, and I was taking ballet and stuff like that. And I went and I did this, I tried out for the talent show. And so there I am, 8 years old, and I won second for my category. This really cool dancer won first. Anyway, but I sang Memories from Cats.
Okay.
You know, so that's the burnt out ends of touch me. You know, I sang that at 8 years old.
Okay.
And I sang Danny Boy at 8 years old. And I'm like, now in retrospect, I'm thinking, why did I sing such depressing songs as an 8-year-old? But, you know, I'm Irish. Maybe that's just part of my culture. So I've been doing that. And then when I was 12, I auditioned for Annie at the Grand. And I got the part of Annie. But I'd been doing some different shows at school and stuff. But that was the first big one at the Grand, and I got the part of Annie. And it was really funny because because I had brown hair, I went to rehearsals for 2 weeks, assuming that the girl who was Annie was going to show up at any moment and that I was just filling in for her. Oh. And nobody told me this. This is just what I thought. I was like, I was in denial. I was like, there is no way that I've actually gotten this part. Right? So it took me 2 weeks to figure out that the part was actually mine and that I was actually going to be doing it. And somebody just recently, actually, just a couple of days ago, Margie Boy, she just posted a whole bunch of pictures from Annie on my Facebook wall. Wow. And I was like, oh my God, I was so little. I still look like me. It's really weird. You should check it out. It's me, just smaller.
Just smaller.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you were 8, so before you were 8, do you remember, was there any kind of catalyst or any kind of particular thing that you remember that made you want to do it, or was it just something that you did?
I guess the first production I ever did, I had my teacher, Mr. Fair. It gets a little confusing because I'm fairly young at this point. Mm-hmm. I remember in kindergarten, I guess that would be earlier than that. So in kindergarten, at a different school, my teacher had been an extra in the Little Rascals when she was a kid. Uh-huh. And I used to watch the Little Rascals a lot. And I think she kind of piqued my thought process that this is something that you actually could do for a living. Like that the people on TV were pretending to be people on TV. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it kind of piqued my interest that way. Mind you, I didn't like her at all. We didn't get along. Because they had these things where you could be like the cutouts. They had cutouts of the animals from Sesame Street, and you could pretend to be Big Bird, or you could pretend to be whatever. And she had me on the water table for like 3 days in a row. She had this system where you were supposed to rotate, and I guess her system was a little faulty, and I ended up on the water table for 3 days. Right. So then I was like, I just left the water table and I went to go and play with the cutouts, and she's like, no, you're on the water table. I'm like, I've been on it for 3 days. I'm just going home. And so I left to go home. I lived very close. We shared a fence with the school, so it wasn't like impossible. Yeah. Anyway, I left to go home, and she's like, you can't do that. And she made me sit next to the heater in my snowsuit for the rest of the day. So then I went home and I told Mom that I quit school. So I quit school in kindergarten. She just made me go to a different school. But yeah, so I guess that was like, I was acting right from the get-go. And
then when you were, after Annie, was that you doing that at the Grand, was that like your first, was that like, now I need to do more? Or
you know what? It was never it was just I did. Like from the time I did Annie, I was doing 5 shows a year. Wow. Right from then. It was just like one after the other, after the other, after the other. I was like, this is something I do. I'm good at this. This is what I am. Right? So I did HMS Pinafore. I did the Mikado. My teacher in grade 7 and 8 was really, really amazing. She put on these big musicals. And so we did a lot of that. And then Gord Love was my acting teacher in high school. Although he never gave me any parts. I think he was a little miffed at me. I don't know. But I was also doing a lot of community stuff at that point. So so I didn't do a lot of stuff in the actual school. But he was a really good acting teacher. Right. Yeah, I just didn't, I don't know.
When you finished high school.
Yes. Which I didn't do.
Which you didn't do. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you pack it in? Did you drop out?
No. What I did was a year before, in grade 12, because at the time it went to 13, right? I actually had 38 credits, which was enough to graduate. I just didn't have the right credits.
Right.
I needed 2 more credits because it was the whole OAC thing.
Yes.
And you couldn't get your grade 12 anymore. I was in this stupid little pocket of idiocy.
I remember that pocket of idiocy.
Yeah, I was in the pocket of idiocy. And also I didn't have... and I was also an honor student. So it was kind of funny because I didn't graduate, but I got a whole bunch of awards the next year because I was on the list for them. Anyway, so what happened was I auditioned for AMDA a year early just to try it out.
Right.
Just to try out auditioning. And then I got this letter saying that I had been accepted to AMDA, which is the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City, that I'd been accepted to AMDA with a scholarship.
Oh.
With a full scholarship except for housing, right? So, what are you going to do? Are you going to stick around to get your 2 lousy credits and lose the scholarship?
No,
you go to New York because they thought I had graduated because in the States they only went to grade 12. So when I had sent them my grade 12 transcripts,
they thought you were done.
They thought I was done.
Did you ever get busted?
I never got busted.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a college degree, but I do not have a high school diploma.
Well.
Which is the problem because I always was very academic. So I've never gone to university because there's always been this, you have to do a year of adult learning center,
geez, yeah.
Or your first year you have to whatever. So it's always been this small barrier to entry. Like even when I came back to Canada, I went to be I tried to go to Seed and get my 2 credits. So I was taking an art and an English at Seed. Right. And then I got the Shaw Festival. Oh. So I didn't get to finish those credits either. And then I tried to at the Shaw Festival to do it by correspondence, and I was just too busy. And then I got married and I had babies. It's like... Yeah. I just never did.
So you did all of these things.
Yeah.
And then when you got married, did you think that you would continue to act?
I was always acting, yeah.
Okay. So you got married, had babies, but continued.
And I made it very political. I brought my kid to all my auditions. Baby in arm with baby.
Did that
yeah. It made me go from working to not working, basically. Yeah, no, it was I actually got phone calls from people, which is very illegal, saying, "Hi, we'd love to hire you, but you have a baby."
But you have a baby.
Yeah, but what are you going to do about the baby? And do you really want this job? And I'm like, well, that's why I auditioned, because I wanted the job.
Right.
And, there are things called nannies and babysitters.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, no, it was very, I'm wearing the pussy hat that Lynn Griffith gave me 2 days ago. Yep. I wear it with my ears tucked in because I didn't actually go to the protest, so I feel ashamed. These are my ashamed ears. But one of the things about it is that I feel like as a woman, I have been actively protesting my whole life.
Okay. Yeah.
So in a good way, in a positive, I'm just going to do it anyway. I don't care about your ceiling.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting that you would get these calls that they're not allowed to make, but they made them anyway.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was something that happened to other people as well?
To other women?
Other women?
Other women hide their babies.
So they don't want the people that they're auditioning for to know that they have babies because they think that they're not going to get hired because of the baby?
Yep.
Is this primarily theater?
I think it's all performing arts. Lots of people hide the fact that they have children, or they'll talk about their children, but it's this thing.
They never actually see the children.
Yeah, or you'll you never talk about your children in an audition.
Right.
Like all actresses are supposed to be barren or something. But if a man talks about his children, he's more likely to get a job.
Of course. Yeah.
It's really funny.
That is
if
interesting,
all the actors I know that are men Once they've had children, they get more jobs because people are like, oh, we should give him a job. He has a family to support. And it's like, oh, we shouldn't give her a job. She's busy with a family.
Yeah.
Right? It's this really weird thing. I don't know if it's as prevalent now as it was when I was, like, with me, I was having my babies in the 90s. Right? So, I don't know, the late 90s, early 2000s. So I think a lot of things may have switched a bit. But I was very in your face with I'm a mom.
Well, somebody has to be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if people are hiding the fact that they have children so they get the work, somebody's got to be the one to bring them in to sort of say it's not right. We have babies.
Yeah, well, what I think is so wild is I'd be at these auditions with my baby and they'd think that was scandalous, but the guy would be sitting there at the audition with his dog.
Right.
You know, like, oh, you're allowed to bring your lab.
You can bring your dog in, but you can't bring your baby.
Yeah, it was a little interesting. But, so it's whatever. I'm sure it didn't do my career any favors, but then again, I think it did my life a lot of favors in that I at least... When I was working with people who I was simpatico thought-wise with, right? So I feel like in this world, we're always balancing that. Like, sure, you can be ambitious, you can get that dream job, but if it's a dream job with a bunch of people you hate, then it's not a dream job, right?
No, the people you work with have a huge impact on everything about your job.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very, very important, and you want... Like, what I discovered with opening this place, this is, like, great. I've been wanting... Well, it was interesting, talking about Gord Love, my theater teacher. I'd opened this place for a while, and I get this message from him on Facebook saying, congratulations, Rosemary, on getting your theater. Because I had wanted to have a theater since I was in, like... I've been talking about it since grade 9. Like, heck, I've been talking about it since I started theater.
Right.
The thing that I really loved... was the actual building and like just the place, you know, it's the canvas of the performing arts. And one of my favorite people in the world, well, two of my favorite people in the world are Nancy Hellwig and Jim Gerard. And they're really been mentors to me my whole life. And Nancy Hellwig knew me from when I was 8 years old. She often says she saw me thing. And I kind of grew up at the Grand Theatre. Like I've done 33 shows at the Grand Theatre in Kingston.
Right.
And she knew me from I was little, and I've always been just as fascinated with her. Like, I'd come by, and she'd be, like, scrubbing the bathroom, and I'd be, like, in there, you know, thinking, and all of that stuff, the making sure that the seats are all set, that all the lights are set, that the box office is doing its thing. Like, my first job, actually, paying job, was when I was 15 years old. Nancy Hellwig gave me a job stuffing envelopes for the Grand Theatre. And I believe that doing that is part of theater. It's just so amazing. Like right now I'm doing the accounting for my friend Jackie English. She's making a movie, and I'm doing her, like I'm her bookkeeper, right? Not an accountant, but her bookkeeper. And so I'm sitting there on my bed, because that's kind of where I work. Turns out, feng shui-wise, it's in the career section of my house. Oh. Always wondered why I liked working there. Anyway, but... Sorry, I just found that out today. I thought, interesting. Awesome. Anyway, so I'm sitting there on my bed with all the... covered with receipts and, like, the book and the stapler and my little Excel spreadsheet, and I'm filling around, and Adam Bonney's sitting at the end of the bed just kind of reading a book, and I turn to him and I go, isn't making movies glamorous? Right? Like there I am looking, putting in the little addition, making sure all the cells add up right. It's like, it's so glamorous making I'm making movies right now. Right?
Well, I mean, one of the things that there is a glamour to all the aspects. But here we are, we're in your theater, the Red Sandcastle. And you were saying you've always wanted to have a theater.
Always.
So what was the catalyst for this?
For this, the Red Sandcastle. Well, I've always wanted one. This theater had many opportunities to exist far earlier than it did.
Okay.
But I was married at the time, and I had a husband who said no all the time. I'd be like, how about this little place? Like, so just in this neighborhood alone, I'll tell you the buildings, which I almost got.
Okay.
Where, you know, Here and Now, the clothing store?
Yeah.
That was a place I wanted to turn into a theater. That was back in 1996. Okay. The 3 buildings, there are now 3 buildings. There used to be one. It used to be called 700 Queen Street East. It's right next to Jilly's.
Yeah.
That was a building I wanted to turn into a theater back in 1995.
Okay.
And I could have bought that whole building for $150,000.
Huh. A steal.
Said no. It even had 3 pool tables, and at the time, after hours clubs or speakeasies or whatever they were called were really in vogue, and I could have run an illegal, but not that I would have.
No, of course.
Nothing illegal ever happens.
No.
But I could have done that, but I didn't. And I was younger then. It would have been hilarious. It even had 3 pool tables. I could have paid that place off in a year. Anyway, so that I was going to. There was a place on Degrassi, which has now been knocked down, and it was an old metallurgy shop, but it had parking, and it was it's now been knocked down and turned into townhouses. So there's a building on there I wanted. So I even looked at the place where the place that is now Center of Gravity.
Right.
The place that is Center of Gravity, I looked at that when it was up for sale years ago.
Okay, yeah.
And it was, the reason I didn't go for that, A, is because Michael said no, but B, because it was just so bloody large, and I was thinking that's more.
The theater was too.
The whole building.
The building's massive.
The building's massive, but I almost had Michael convinced that we could move upstairs and, the whole bit. But he was very very risk averse,
right?
And also always, he didn't have a lot of faith in me as a human. But that things like that are the reasons that we're not together anymore.
Right.
And then what happened was he and I finally split after 10 years of not good. We finally split in February of 2011. And then this place came up for rent in April of 2011. And I got this place because nobody could say no to me. Yeah.
Nice. And what was so you moved into this? Is it a storefront theater?
This was a pottery studio.
A pottery studio.
Which I had to renovate into a storefront theater with the thanks of many, 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 many friends who came and lended their support and their just sweat equity.
So it went from, I guess at one point it must have been a store.
It was a pottery studio.
Okay. And
for 16 years.
For 16 years.
Run by a woman named Ethel.
Okay.
Which is, her middle name was Ethel. And which I thought it was funny because it turns out my middle, it doesn't turn out. No. It's always been that my middle name's Ethel. But I found out that her name's Ethel because some postage came for her. And I was like, this place has been run by a crazy person named Ethel now for 22 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ethel means noble, by the way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you and with all those people who came and helped turn this place from a pottery studio into a theater. You brought in lights. You hung rods.
Yay, Craigslist.
Yeah.
Yes.
You've got a little booth. You've got your whole.
Yeah, I didn't have everything to start with. Right? That's the one thing. I think part of the reason that I'm still here is that I am willing to wait until money, resources, and opportunity knock on the door. So a couple of things came together. I had no idea what to do. I thought I gave him a year's rent up front. It was really funny because the landlord called and said, "So you want to rent the place?" Because I'd left him a message, and he's like, I go, yeah. He goes, okay, what do you want to do? I go, I want to put in a theater. He goes, theater? And I go, I'll give you a whole year's rent up front. And he went, okay. Yeah. Right? So then I came and saw it, and I looked at it. He said, so you said a whole year's rent up front. I'm like, oh, yeah. So then we walked to the bank, and I basically gave him all my money. Yeah, I just cleared out my bank account, which I had been saving since I was 8 years old.
Okay.
This was an account I always put money into and never took money out of.
Right. Oh, my God.
And I had been saving money in this account for years. Years and years. Constantly just, anytime I had a baby bonus check, I stuck it. So when I say I'm not government funded, I guess I'm slightly wrong.
A little bit.
Slightly wrong. Yeah, I stuck my baby bonus checks in there. And anytime I made a little bit of money, I'd stick it in that account and just not touch it. I'm a very patient person, and I think it helps.
Yeah.
So I had this little nest egg, and that's what I threw at this project. So I had that money, threw it in here. Then I had a little bit extra left over to renovate and do that sort of thing. And I totally lucked out on Craigslist. What was happening was right at the time when I decided to do this, like the universe was on my side. Right when I decided to do it, I went on Craigslist and believe it or not, a church in the suburbs, some sort of evangelical church that just had like an office space in the suburbs, was going out of business.
Okay.
Like, how do you go out of business as a church in the suburbs? I don't know.
Okay.
But I got the initial 3 risers from them.
Right.
I got that curtain that's at the front and the curtain rod. Not the curtain, but I got the curtain rod. With totally different curtains. In fact, you may have seen the curtains because I often use them in my pantomimes. Those one with all the weird flowers on them. Yeah, the kind of 70s flower print.
Nice.
It was those curtains.
Nice.
So initially I had those curtains up there. Anyway, I got the little sound system from them, right? Which gave me a basic sound system. I'm getting to the point of upgrading that. And I got the chairs.
Right.
Right? So I got all this stuff that kind of set me up. And then there was also a guy who, on Craigslist as well, who gave me my initial lights, which was for $3,000. I got the setup that I have of the lights, like basic lights. Since then, I've upgraded considerably. But I got the basic lights. I got my first pipes, the first pipes to put in. He had all of that. Wow. And also he was an electrician, so he set up my electricity to be able to do it. Right? The universe said, yes, Rosemary, you're making a leap of faith. We have faith in you too. And it was amazing. Really amazing.
What was it like running a theater, like a storefront at that, when you first opened? Were people just happy to have the space to do something? Or was it... People
were enthusiastic and happy and lovely. I opened it in May. The first show I had in here was my best, a beautiful friend of mine. She had just done her show on Susanna Day Hamnet. She had just done her show Nearly Lear on Broadway. And she traveled to Australia with it.
Nice.
And it was this one-person show. And I was like, Susanna, you have to open my theater. I've opened this theater. And actually, she and her husband were here, like, taking down stuff, bringing down walls. He's a cabinetry maker. He like helped me out. He was like one of my angels. Nice. Steve Simeon, one of my angels. This guy George Hewitt, who has beautiful artist, one of my angels. Like lots of these people came and helped, and so she agreed, and she did her beautiful show here, and that launched it. So it was like from Broadway to the Red Sandcastle Theatre. Nice. It was like so beautiful, and then that brought us through into the summer. And then what I was able to do was that first Fringe that was on during the time that I had just opened, I was able to go to the Fringe and like just talk up the theater. And so a bunch of my first shows were actually hits from the Fringe that I was able to bring in here. And then after about 6 months, people realized I was here and people started calling and that kind of thing.
Well, one of the barriers to production previously has always been
somewhere to do it. Yeah.
And I remember years ago, like trying to find a spot to do a theater, your options, you basically had like 3 options for
really expensive.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of the reason I opened this theater as well. Like one of the things that made me actually do the leap of this needs to happen was the pitch blitz at Pass Marais.
Yeah.
So I go to the pitch blitz, which I've never been able to say. In fact, for the first couple of years, I was calling it the peach blitz for some reason, which is wrong. Anyway, I go to that, and I go in with my play. I've written this play. I still haven't put it on. I need to, like this damn Jenny's Friends. I need to get it put on sometime. Anyway, I go in, and I pitch Jenny's Friends, and he turns to me, and he goes, so you want to put this play on? And I'm like, yeah. He says, so you want us to put this play on? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, we're fully booked for the next 2.5 years. And I went, oh, okay. So that can't happen. I'm like, oh, okay. So considering they invited us to pitch, I then walked into the lobby, and also granted, I may have been a little more emotional than usual because my marriage was disintegrating, right? So I will take that into consideration in telling this story. I walk into the lobby, and I look around, and there's all these people sitting in the lobby. And two of the people are actually Lynn Griffith and Sean, who became really good friends. Right. But I didn't know them at the time, really. Like, I just knew them in passing. Anyway, I walk into the lobby, and I start to cry. Just bawling my eyes out. And part of the reason I started to cry was not just for the disappointment of me, but the fact that everybody in this lobby was waiting for opportunity. And there was no opportunity. There was no real opportunity.
Yeah.
So here we are wanting to do our art with nowhere to do it.
Yeah.
That won't financially cripple us. And the number of people that would come up to me, artists that I loved, like, and say they just did a show and they were like, it was a really great success. We only lost $6,000.
Yeah.
And I would be like, what?
Yeah.
What? No. It struck me as so incredibly wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I opened this place because I needed to stop that, or at least, the whole idea of be the change you want to see in the world. I had to be the change I wanted to see in the world. Yeah. And I wanted there to be a canvas for us as artists to be able to put on our thing. I mean, like I often say, sure, as a painter, I can take my rubber boot. I can paint my rubber boot.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. I can make that be art. I can paint a stick that I find. I can paint it. But it's so much easier with a canvas. It's so much easier to show other people what we've done. Yeah. You take a canvas, you stick it on a wall, everybody gets to look at it. Yeah. You want to do theater, you have a place that's set up that has lights and sound and chairs and risers and a way to get tickets and, a dressing room where you can change and a few things around where you can put the show on. It's just easier. So we can actually get to the art. We're not struggling with how to do it. We're struggling with it.
Well, that is the thing is that, like, I've been a part of those shows that were like, you finish and then you look at the books and go, we had great turnout. We just don't have any money now.
Yeah.
Because all the money went to the rent on that theater.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it's like, and it has to be that way to a certain extent because of the amount of money that they're paying. But like, people wonder why this place, I have no staff. Staff is expensive.
Well, I mean,
like the amount I'd have to charge, like I don't get paid basically anything.
Yeah.
I just kind of skim through life,
Yeah, when you're renting one of those spaces, you are paying for box office staff and maybe some ushers, and you're paying for
the janitor and
the technician and
all
that stuff. So that's what the price is there, but it makes it so that if you can't get a grant, you can't afford your fucking show.
I know. It's like, and so I am which is why when I looked at the place that is now Center of Gravity, I was like, no, that's too big. Because I could not by myself handle that.
Yourself, and so you'd have to have staff and the price would go up.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I couldn't do it. The people that got it were the perfect people because they're a collective. Yeah. They have the bodies to be able to run that. It's beautiful. I love them to death. They're fantastic. That when I go in and I see the aerials and everything and the circus camp that I'm like, great use of space. Makes me so happy.
Yeah.
But this place is the size that I can manage it. And because it's interesting, like I opened this place when I wasn't a housewife anymore. And I kind of feel like all those skills that I had as a housewife translated very easily to being a theater owner because I was used to working my ass off and making no money. I'm used to that. Yeah. I'm not used to the trappings of, like, I don't sit there at the end of the week and go, oh, I didn't get a paycheck for this. I feel so useless. No, I had 18 years of I never got a paycheck for anything. So my self-esteem had to come from somewhere else, And it's true. My self-esteem comes from the feeling that I'm doing something worthwhile.
Yeah.
And raising a family is worthwhile, and supporting a theater community is worthwhile. Like this is, if I could make some money, that'd be great too. Yeah. But
one of the other things that you've done is, I look at your schedule and I noticed that, in the summer you have your day camps at the moment.
Yeah, I love that.
You have your day camps. You've really sort of integrated with the community so that people come to you for these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Is that something you fell into, or did you plan for that at some point?
That, Jen and Dave, who live around the corner, when I was walking here the first month, I'm like walking here to go do it. They're like, how's that theater coming along? I go, great. They go, you should have a kids camp because I've got 5 kids. I'd put them in it. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And that's how that started. Well. Yeah, and it worked out really well. And I love doing my kids camp because, well, you know me, that's how we know each other from playwriting, is that this writing really fast thing is something I do well and I really enjoy. And so, I got into playwriting because I did a 24-hour playwriting contest, and I kept doing them, and I won 7 of them. I won the first one I ever did, and I kept winning them, and that's just kind of, it just turned out to be that's some hidden talent that I didn't know I had, right? So I've translated that to help me do this camp. Yeah. Because what I do is the kids come on the first day. I teach them about theater history in the morning in this kind of very hands-on way. Mostly I'm spying on the children. Mm-hmm. Mostly I'm figuring out who they are. Yep. And what type of their energy is and what type of people they are, right? And what skills they've already come to the table with and what things we're going to work on and that kind of thing. And then in the afternoon we decide, kind of because they know a bit about theater now, what type of play they want to put on, what type of characters they want to be. We ended up doing last year. It was really funny. I had a really weird group because I had all these boys who were all these gifted boys because they were from the gifted class, and I had all these girls as well, smart girls and stuff. But basically the boys decided they wanted to do Beowulf and the girls wanted to be foxes and unicorns. So I did a retelling of Beowulf with foxes and unicorns in it, right? But it was just so funny. They just come up with this stuff. So it's always a challenge and fun. So I write the play on the Monday night, and then we spend the next week doing everything we do to put on a show. And for me, it's really fun because what I love about theater is that it really is a company and a group doing it. And I don't like it when you get to the really, I've done Shaw, I've done Mirvish, I've done those things where you can't even put up your own zipper on your own dress, where you have nothing to do with the set, and that's not, it's not my happy place. Yeah. The paycheck's my happy place. Yeah. But the actual, but that's not my happy place is when you get to make the set and you get to do the thing and you get to be really part of the creative process. So that's what me and the kids do. We build the set, we make our costumes, we rehearse the part, we do the whole thing, and then we put it on the Friday. And so I think what's been successful about the kids camp for me is it gives me, I think of it as putting on a show with a troupe of shorter people. It's the same as I'd put on a show with grown-ups. It's just these guys happen to be young, really young, sometimes 5 years old, right? But it's the same process for me as putting up any show. Yeah. And I really, really enjoy it, especially because it's so focused. It's 9 till 3 every day, and we go to the park when it's the summer, and we go and run our lines in the park. Sometimes we play line tag, where you have to catch the person that has their next line, right, and you have to do all that, and it's really fun.
Well, you were mentioning earlier, 24-hour playwriting contest.
Oh yes, the 1,000 Monkeys.
About the 1,000 Monkeys.
Thank you.
And
my favorite thing.
It's one of the things I look forward to the most in the summer.
Thank you.
That because you know what, I think you said once that you do a 24-hour playwriting contest, and so you think I'm going to be writing with all these people, and then you're by yourself in your home.
I know. Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah. And so you have this vague recollection that other people are out there writing too, but you don't see them. Yeah, no. The thing I love about the 1,000 Monkeys is people arrive on the Friday night at 6:00, and they write their name with chalk on the wall, and then we go to my little dictionary, and we flip it 3 times, and you get 3 different words. And then at 6 o'clock or whatever, I guess people arrive a little earlier than 6. At 6 o'clock, Jane calls from New York City with the theme. She's my Jane Shields. She's my best friend who's a playwright in New York City, and she went to Tisch, so she's really good at coming up with themes and stuff.
Nice.
So she gives us the overarching theme, and then we all spend 24 hours here writing the play.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. At first I was going to, when I first had the idea, I thought I'd like barricade us all in so nobody could leave. But I'm not good at enforcing rules, so I didn't. Anyway.
I mean, there are probably downsides to doing that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
fire codes and stuff, yeah.
But, I mean, on the other side of that, after that 24 hours of writing, is getting the chance to read all this.
Isn't it amazing?
Which is like so much fun to be able to just sort of say, these things were written. These things didn't exist. They happened.
They happened here.
Yeah.
And the funniest part is when you're reading a play, like we're all reading the play, and we've been watching each other from the corner of our eyes writing it, and you're like, oh, that's why she kept backing up and screaming.
Yes.
You're like, oh, like remember that one year where Barb was like, geez, what the doll, and then you read her play and you're like, oh,
okay,
that's what was going on. Yeah, so funny.
It's so like, and the thing that is always that I find gratifying from that is at the end of that weekend I have something that I've written.
Yes.
Whether it is, and it's never going to be long, it's like almost never going to be long enough to like do, but you have like,
but you start
this draft,
that
you can then build on, and you've heard it,
so
is there something here? Was this sleep deprivation, or is there something here?
Yeah,
and then you can just start building.
And the food's amazing.
Yes.
Right, because Braze gives us food, and the Roy gives us food, and Rashers gives us food, and the Leslieville Cheese Shop gives us food. Like, it's such a bringing together of the community. Yeah. And I love it when people walk by and they think, oh, what's going on here? Like a terrorist cell or something?
People are always like, at that night, like, as the bar lets out, the drunk people walk by and they're like, what's going on in there?
Yeah. Remember that time when the schizophrenic person came in and we had to give her a loaf of bread to get her to go?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was so strange. Yeah.
There's all kinds of weird people.
But it's amazing. Yeah. What I'm amazed at, too, is it never bothers the upstairs neighbors because we're quiet as mice.
I think the first year you were saying, I thought there'd be more talking.
Yeah.
But
there
isn't.
Most
part, it's like everybody comes in at 6 o'clock. The only sound is the sound of
typing. And then around 11, people get up and start having smokes and stuff.
Just like
and angsty conversations in the smoking lot.
Yeah, just like all kinds of like, so how's it going?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I think I might have to tear the whole thing up.
Yeah. So crazy.
Yeah. And I've done that. Last year, I think I started writing, and I was like 2 hours in. It was like, nope.
Start again.
Start over again. But it's like, I love that it exists.
That play, Call, that I wrote this year is going on at the New Ideas Festival.
Amazing.
Yeah, it got picked up by them. And it's going to be on my birthday.
Nice.
March 8th is opening night.
Amazing.
So that's what I'm doing for my birthday.
That's a great way to spend your
birthday. So
that's
kind of fun. And actually, I've got another play in the New Ideas Festival this year, too. Quite by accident. Play for some reason, had to leave. Right? So that play left. And I got this emergency call from Pat going, Rosemary, I know you can write quickly. We need a 10-minute play. Here are your actors. Here are the actors, because they'd already cast some actors to be in this play. So I ended up writing to spec for these actors. And so I wrote it on Thursday and Friday, and I gave it to them on Saturday, and they were rehearsing on Saturday. Crazy. So it's going on the 15th.
Wow.
And that one's called Why. Why? But the letter, why.
The letter Y.
It's just why.
Just why.
And then the one that I wrote here at the Thousand Monkeys is called Call. Yeah.
And the Thousand Monkeys, I mean, this is something that, I mean, you do have a number of repeat people.
Yes.
Year after year.
I've made such great friendships from the Thousand Monkeys. Like these people are so
never seen before.
And they become really close friends, and I think because we've all had this amazing shared experience.
When you've looked at somebody across a table at 5 a.m. after writing for so long, there's a certain feeling of you and I, we know this thing.
Yeah, right? You know? Like it's like going to battle together. You're like comrades.
And when you finish it, you're like, everybody's like together and
exactly
hear the thing, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, and the number of cross-pollination friendships that have grown out of the 1,000 Monkeys is really quite spectacular. I guess because it's a filter system to a certain extent. Like, people who are willing to do the 1,000 Monkeys are a certain type of person.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it does bring you to simpatico.
It certainly gives you the opportunity to throw yourself into a thing.
Yes.
Like, if you're a person who normally is, like, when you're writing, you're cautious and you take a long time to get started, you don't have that. So
no.
You have a finite period of time. So
just zoom. Yeah.
So you can't think, you can't judge, you just write.
Which is, I think, why the fast thing works for me. Because I think, if anything, I'm distractible and in the moment. So I think if I, not that I have ADHD or anything. Sorry, I'm just realizing, I'm like, maybe. Anyway, but it lets me focus. And I think I learned this skill about focusing on my own stuff being a young mom, because when you have little kids, you have no time to yourself.
Right.
So if you get that 15 minutes to do what you need to do, you have to do it then. And you do it. So I think you develop that kind of intensity of, like, you have to distill everything. So it has to be like I remember once when I first had Mackelson, he was about a year and a half, and I finally had a night to go out by myself, right? Like, without him. And so my friend Mike Page took me dancing. And so we went to this club, and I'm dancing, and I guess I was dancing a bit hard and crazy because Mike had this feeling he had to keep turning to people going, she's a new mother. This is her first time out in a year and a half. Please forgive her. But it was I'm having a good time now. Right? Yeah, it was really funny. But whatever.
Yeah, no, there's something about throwing yourself into it like that. I mean, talking about gosh, it took me 8 years to write that play I did this summer.
Right.
It was only
there you
because
go.
I was doing it that I had to finish.
That's a beautiful play, by the way. A really great play.
Thank you. I would have written that. I would have still been writing that if I didn't have.
If you didn't have a deadline. Yeah.
And having a deadline is
so great.
Yeah.
And I think in this world, you know what? It isn't even a deadline. You know what I think it is? I think what it is in this world, it's validation. You have a reason for it to exist, right? And I think in this world, I when I walk around going back to the AGO, which is why it's so important to me. When I go to the section of the AGO that has all the medieval religious art, and the sculptures and stuff, and then you see a walnut, and in that walnut is the entire Last Supper carved into this bloody walnut.
Right.
And you go, that's incredible. How did that happen? People didn't have TV or the internet.
Yeah.
People had hours and hours and hours of time where they weren't doing much, where they could do something. You could spend 8 hours doing that and nobody would feel like you were wasting your time because you were doing something, which now we fill up with, did you see every single episode of The Walking Dead? Yeah, I did. Back in, I think, watching every episode of Netflix was working on the walnut. Back in the 13. Oh, there's old Bob. Sure, he's working on the walnut. Yeah. Right?
Well, aren't you working on your walnut?
Exactly.
I actually think that there's something about taking that time away. Like, people who say, oh, I'd love to write a thing, but I just don't have time. And you just want to turn off for an hour.
Yeah.
See what you get.
You have time. I haven't had a TV. Now I do because of the internet.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually had a TV in my life since I was 18. I never had a TV, right? Since I moved out of my house, I just didn't have a TV. And I used to upholster furniture and do all this stuff. And people would be like, Rosemary, how do you get so much stuff done? And then my friend Jessica, she came and lived with me for a few months when she was between apartments and she lived there. And she's like, I now understand why you build all this stuff. You have so much time because you're not watching TV.
Yeah.
Right? But now I'm watching TV because when I check my email, it's there telling me I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah.
It's the same, scrolling the Facebook is the same thing. Although I think it was better when we used to just go down to pubs and hang out with each other.
Well, we would converse in real ways rather than just screaming in text.
Yeah, and also you didn't have, like, you could have a conversation. You didn't have to feel like you were trolling someone if you talked too much to them on their page. Yes. If you went back and forth. Now if you go back and forth too many times, you're like, oh, have I interfered with their life?
Yeah.
You know? Like before, if somebody was overhearing you talk in a pub, well, it's a conversation. Of course they're talking.
Yeah.
But if you talk about stuff long ago, it's like, are you guys having an argument?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, are you going to unfriend each other because you've talked too long? Like, right?
Yeah. No, it's one of those strange things about the way that we are now spending so much time. We've replaced. Well, sometimes people have two screens. They have their TV screen, they have their computer screen.
Sometimes it's on the same bloody machine. Yeah.
So you're watching a thing, scrolling through a thing, so distracted.
Texting somebody else, yeah.
So, it's hard. It's that whole, like, how do we get people off their screens into the theater, which is that whole...
Yeah. But I think also people who do make the leap and go and see a show, they start going to see more shows because it's so important. And I think the major thing that is important is about the shared experience of the human, right? Like part of the reason I think that we like Netflix, part of the reason I think that we like watching these shows is that even in the privacy of our own home, we have this shared experience that we can then talk about.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Like we've all seen all the episodes.
Yep.
I think when it used to be just TV, if you weren't there on that Saturday, you missed it.
Right.
But now you didn't miss it. You can go and be part of that collective conversation about that particular art form together. But I think there's something about coming to see a show that is beautiful. The one thing that I would do differently with this place if given the resources, like this place couldn't actually do it, is have a lobby that was a bar.
Yeah.
Because I think what is missing from this particular space that I'd love is a place where everybody could go after and talk about the show. Now, granted, we are close enough to Braised and we're close enough to the Roy and various other places that I do encourage the audience as a mass to go to these places to chat about what they just saw, because I think it's about communication.
It is about communication, and there is something about that, like having that spot. And, most theaters, after the show, they'd be like, all right, get up.
Get out, go.
But to have a spot... have you been... There's the Staircase Theatre in Hamilton.
Yes, I was.
Which has, like, that... Like, they have their lobby, which is also a bar and a cafe.
Yeah, it doesn't work well.
It's amazing.
Amazing. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I always think that if I was going to open a theater, we'd have that.
Yeah.
And then during the day, we'd have the cafe.
Yes.
And
that's what I want to do for when I open my Wilde Festival. Like right now, I've opened the Wilde Festival just as shows to get the reputation going. But my next thing that I wish to do is actually have a space for the Wilde Festival. And part of that is having an active restaurant, or that's my upstairs neighbor. One of the great things about the indie theater.
The thing about, you have somebody who lives upstairs.
Yes.
Which means that you are competing.
Yes.
Like your show, you have some stipulations about what can happen in this theater because you have people who live
upstairs. It has to be quiet after 11.
Musical, right? You can't
no, I have big musicals here.
Okay.
They just have to be done by 10:30.
All right then.
Yeah. Just by 10:30, please be quiet. And they're like, we've had, I feel bad because I've stepped on their toes a number of times, but sometimes they've been practicing guitar and I've had to tell them, no, please don't do that. We try and be cognizant. Part of the issue is that a couple of years ago, the landlord redid the floor in the apartment and took out the insulation.
That is a problem.
So that wasn't a problem.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault. They just did that. They just live there. But, so if I ever was to buy the building, I would correct things like that. Right? Yeah. Like, so that would be amazing.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that in the future, given the money, I will do things to, I'm always improving.
Of course.
You should see what I've done to the dressing room.
I haven't seen it since Eldritch Theatre.
Yeah, no. I've done this whole big reno downstairs. Nice. Yeah, it looks really nice. I did it because they filmed Jackie English's filmed downstairs, and they wanted to look a certain way. So I just was like, that was one of the renos I was thinking of doing anyway. So I just did it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, what is the Wilde Festival? Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, the Wilde Festival is a new thing that that I've started with Jen Watson and Dorian Hart, and what we're doing is it's a festival devoted to looking at the world through the lens of Oscar Wilde. So it's anything he's ever written or anything he would have liked, and also anything he thought was important. So therein we get to discuss things which are important to me, such as LGBTQ whatever rights, the penal system, beauty, wit, bilingualism, all of those things, because Oscar Wilde wrote in both languages. He all had things to do with the penal system, and of course the whole whole gay thing is very important. And I think that all those discussing those issues is a focal point for the Wilde Festival. And also I wanted a place that kind of like the Shaw Festival, like the Stratford Festival, but more fun. So the Wilde Festival. It's got a great name too, Wilde, right? So I kind of want it to be like the Fire Island of theater festivals, right? Like just you go, you have a great time. And the space I really want the original space, like the head space, to have kind of a bar as attached to it, because I think what we need to do is do really great, beautiful, witty, amazing shows, and have a place for people to discuss after.
Well, it's like the Fringe tent effect.
Yeah,
like have a place.
Yeah,
after the show.
I love the Fringe tent. Right? Where's it going to be now?
Oh,
like what are they going to do? Scatting Court.
So Dundas, Bathurst.
Oh,
which. I don't know. I mean, we'll see how that works.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll work.
We're used to having it at Honest Ed's. Now, sadly, no longer with us. And, right by the subway and things like that.
Yeah. I really loved it when it was at the Transact Club. Remember that?
I do, but they don't.
I guess so. Yeah.
The Transact never really liked having them there.
Oh.
But it got too big.
I guess so. But I loved that. That was so much fun.
It was great.
It was so great. And I loved it when they were like, everybody has to go inside. And you'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Party. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Well, this is great. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure, Phil. Thank you.